We are now recording, and I'm going to start presentation. Excellent. Okay, and we will have the slide deck available for everybody after the presentation as well. So what we're going to go over today, I'm going to give an overview and a background of the grant program for those on this call who are not familiar with it. I'm going to talk about what kind of projects are eligible through this grant, how we go about the selection process and awarding grants, and then how to navigate EAGLE. And then what EAGLE is the Ecology Administration of Grants and Loans. It's the program that we use to manage all of our grants and loans in the agency. And then please feel free to raise your hand or throw questions into the chat during the presentation, and then I will provide an opportunity at the end also for questions. This grant originated from the Oil Transportation Safety Act of 2015, and it directs Ecology to award grants to emergency responders to assist with oil spill and hazardous materials response and firefighting equipment. And this was it's a pretty broad and big scope for this grant. It asks us to, in that process, before we award grants and during the evaluation process, to determine the need for new or additional updated equipment or resources, and to part of that is also keeping up with what is the latest trends in the oil spill and hazmat community, and then to prioritize our funding based on need for equipment and resources. We have completed 4 grant cycles, and we're in the middle of ending our 5th grant cycle. And this kind of demonstrates each biennium the number of applications that we've had and the number of grants we've been able to award, including the funds that have been requested and the funds we've been able to award. And as this shows, we had averaged about 40 applications until this last biennium. We had 52 applications, close to $10 million requested, and we have not been able to keep up with that demand. We've only had between $2.8 and $3.2 million that we've actually been able to award when we've done a full grant cycle in the biennium. And some of this is due to state budget issues. Grants always seem to be the first thing to go where they want to pull money from. This also has to do with during the pandemic in 2020 that had impact on grants with the supply chain delays and stuff. And so I don't think that we've yet to have a full grant cycle that has gone according to plan. And on that note, I know there's probably some questions about, with our current state budget, now we're going to have funding for this next biennium. And the answer right now is I don't know. We won't know until the legislative session is over. So we are moving forward as if we are going to receive full funding for this grant program. And by the time we get to doing evaluations and awards, we should know how much funding, if any, we have, and we are able to award out. So who's eligible? Washington County cities, municipalities, other state recognized local governments such as ports, public utility districts, federally recognized tribal governments, and Washington state agencies. So really in any public agency is eligible to apply. Who is not eligible are private entities, nonprofit organizations, non-government organizations, and federal agencies. And so if you do not fall under the category of an eligible entity, this opportunity will not show for you when you go into EAGLE to apply for it. And if you think that it should and it doesn't, then contact me and we'll take a look at why it may not be showing for you and what your organization type is. There's grant information about the grant itself. We do not require any matches. So we try to fund 100% of eligible requests. There's no ceiling for grant projects. However, we do only have around $3.2 million of biennium to award out, and that's not going as far as it used to go. So we may limit grant awards to $100,000. We actually did that for this biennium for most projects in just on the equipment task side, so that we could fund more grants around the state. It would be very easy for us to award all $3.2 million to one or two agencies in the state to fund their projects, and we just don't have the funds to be able to award out what the need is for everyone. And this is state funded through the Model Toxics Control Operating Account. So there are no federal funds associated with this grant. Some of the limitations, we are not, we're not offering reimbursement of salaries and benefits or overhead with this grant. That would eat up considerably into our budget. And the reimbursement has to be approved costs directly associated with the project. So when we go through the agreement negotiation, we'll talk about what you applied for. If you did not apply for something and you get an award and you ask to purchase a different type of equipment that is not in your application, we're not going to be able to approve it. And cannot be used to support events that are part of your normal operating environment. And that just means if it is something that you are an oil or hazmat, something that you are in control of and you're responding to it at your work site, that's not the intent of what this grant is for. And I'll get more into that in the later slides. And I do want to note that this application, the 25-27 application questions, are identical to this current biennium. So if you applied for a grant in 2023, the questions are identical. Whether or not you reuse your answers is up to you, but that might help with some of the standard questions that get repeated. And I apologize, we do not have a way to pull your answers from 2020, from the 23-25 cycle to the 25-27 cycle. And you must have a role outlined in an emergency response plan that is directly related to hazardous materials. So what this means is this is not an employer emergency response plan. This is something like an LEPC or the state emergency response plan, a federal response plan. You have to have a role that's outlined in there that is directly related to oil spill or hazardous materials. If you do not, then you will not, your application will not move on to evaluation. And you also have to demonstrate that you have the appropriate training to respond to oil and hazardous materials incidents. So this is, for on the non-fire side, this is your 8-hour, your 24, your 40-hour HAZWOPER, depending on what it is that you want the equipment to do. And on the fire side, this is at the operations and tech level training. And if you don't have this training, you can request through this grant program to get that training for your organization. And partnerships are highly encouraged. Partnerships to address issues of common concern, to build response capacity locally, regionally, and statewide. So eligible partners can include those ineligible entities like the nonprofits, the non-government organizations, federal government, as long as they have the training and the authority to respond to oil and hazardous material incidents. Where we have seen this successfully implemented in prior grant cycles is usually through a regional like hazmat team, when different fire departments will, all buy into kind of like a co-op of a hazmat or team for a region. One fire department or district will take on, or the county emergency management will take on applying for the grant, and then we'll distribute the equipment to the hazmat team as needed. This is our timeline. The grants applications opened on March 4th, and they will be open until April 29th, and they will close at, I actually think 5 p.m. is incorrect. I think it's actually like at 4:59 p.m. If your application is not in by that time, I cannot accept or your application, or the system won't accept your application. So I highly encourage everybody to get their applications in as soon as possible. And that will give time to, one, make sure that you actually did submit it, and that we have received it. And through May and June, we will conduct our screening of applications and move those that pass the screening into evaluation. And then in July 2025, that is when I will create the final offer list. I will route it through our Spills program leadership team and then start making notifications to those that have received an award. And starting in August, we hope to be in the process of negotiating and signing funding agreements. And all projects have to be complete by June 30th, 2027 at the end of the biennium. Our funding is tied to the biennium. So once the end of the biennium comes, we do not get to roll over any extra funds that we have. We lose those funds, they get brought back into the general account, and we have to start fresh. And I do want to point out that there's a couple of additional dates in here. So we are in the process of updating Eagle. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm not on the work group that is working on that update. It is moving to a new platform. We call it IGX. Initially, they were planning on having the update rolled out in June. And that's one of the reasons why our timeline of our grant is right now, is because we were planning for that for like a May 2025 blackout period when they were changing from the current system to the new system. And so in order to get our applications open and accepted, so that we could do our evaluations and get agreements going as close to the beginning of the biennium as possible, we had to roll over into a new application using the exact same questions and applications that we used for the 23-25 biennium. And there have been some hiccups with the process, with bugs, and trying to work out all the kinks. And so that has been pushed back, and it will actually be in September. So in September 2025, we will not be able to access Eagle to sign agreements, to approve any payment requests or progress reports. You won't be able to access it to submit for reimbursement. And come the first week of October, it will be open to internal, to Ecology users. We will learn the new system. And then I think right now the timeline is about October 10th. We will open it up externally, and we will have training that we will put on and available to anybody that has a grant in the system to kind of learn how to navigate through the new system. So that's our timeline right now. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how much of an improvement, if any, it will be in current Eagle system. And I do want to mention that we are incorporating and working environmental justice and equity into our grant program. It is something that Ecology is dedicated to. And part of, when we talk about the evaluation, I'll go into a little bit more detail about some of the environmental justice and equity pieces that we've incorporated into our evaluation. I did want to mention that for the 23-25 grant cycle, while we were building our application, we were reviewing questions to make sure that we were asking meaningful questions and identifying where we could reduce the burden on the applicant. And one of the ways that we came up with that was creating a GIS module, which I'll explain during the evaluation portion of this presentation. And by creating that GIS module, we were able to eliminate several questions from the application to make it less burdensome for our applicants and make the evaluation process more objective and easier for our evaluators. Yes, and then resources. So I emailed those that were registered as of 8:30 this morning, the application instructions and our funding guidelines. If you did not receive that, please feel free to throw in the chat that you did not receive it, and we'll get that email to you. I don't think we can attach a document in the chat because of, I think it ties it back to our SharePoint, which external users won't have access to, but we'll make sure you get a copy of those. They're also in Eagle once you initiate an application. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. Richard, are there any questions that have come up?
I'm not seeing anything yet, no.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to move on to project type. So what is and is not eligible through this grant? And so this is kind of language that I pulled from our funding guidelines, the projects through this grant that are successful really need to support the implementation of an emergency response plan. And as an applicant, you also need to be able to demonstrate the ability to house and maintain equipment that you're requesting. There should be benefits to multiple entities, stakeholders, interested parties, public or across the region or the state. This is for the control and containment of oil and hazmat incidents. This is not meant to support a biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosive response. And that doesn't mean that you cannot put in for equipment or training that is used in those kinds of incidents, but there needs to be a very clear connection to control and containment of oil and hazmat incidents. So these are some categories that are conditionally eligible, and that just means that there might be a little some additional things that you need to either provide or talk about if you're requesting these. So communications. In the past, we have awarded funds for applicants to replace their entire radio system in their fleet. So in trucks and vehicles and handhelds, we don't have depending on the type of projects and number of applications that we get, those requests can be, between $200,000 to $300,000, if not more. And that's just not a primary objective of what our grant program is. So while it is eligible to apply for that, we're not going to mark your application as ineligible. The priority is funding may not be in your favor. Where we have seen people be more successful is requesting funds to build a comms trailer that they can bring on site to an incident and multiple partners can use. So we do understand that, especially when you're responding to a larger hazmat incident, is not every fire department or that is responding may be on the same comm system and have issues and trouble communicating to one another. And so one way to help with that would be like through a comms trailer instead of updating an entire radio system for a fleet of vehicles. Drones are eligible. There are some conditions that need to be met. Those are in the funding guidelines. High level, you need to have a drone program already in place. And you may will need to provide a copy of that program. And I can't, something else on top of my head, I can't remember what it is. There are also requirements on where the drone is manufactured. We are following the same as the federal guidelines, that there are certain foreign entities where the drones cannot have components from. And I know that this really does restrict what is available out there, especially for wanting drones to help with hazmat surveillance and stuff. But that is something that as a program, we are not ready, or we're not at the point where we are going to open that up, primarily because we want this equipment to be available to use throughout all of Washington State, including on federal land if there are responses out there. Wildlife response is conditionally eligible, and the only reason for that is you need to be an entity that has the authority and jurisdiction to do wildlife response for an oil spill. Travel costs, and the conditional part of that is it just needs to meet the current state per diem rates. And I don't remember why I put hazardous materials training on there. I think it may be because there is some training for fire that is available through the state fire marshal's office, and we do want you checking with that first. But that I know that I don't know if Scott's on this call or not. That training is not always enough to meet the needs that are out there, and so we do encourage people to host their own hazmat training and invite other partners to attend. Oh, we got one more in there. Maintenance or service packages. Those just have to be, we can only reimburse for services or maintenance that has that occurs during the biennium. So we can't if you pre-buy a maintenance or service package, we can't reimburse it until that time has passed. So you will either need to submit for reimbursement once at the end of each quarter or at the end of the biennium, and we cannot reimburse for anything that goes past the biennium. And ineligible, I feel like this grows every grant cycle for what isn't eligible as people apply for things that we hadn't considered. So this grant is for the control and containment of oil on hazmat. So mechanical oil collection, like skimmers and excavators and stuff to mechanically collect oil is not eligible. Cleaning and decontamination of equipment is not eligible. Capital construction projects. We talked about the administrative costs, so no salaries and benefits. We can't reimburse for grant application preparation or indirect costs. Firefighting apparatuses. So unfortunately, we cannot buy a fire department a new engine or quint or tender. And this should not be news to anybody at this point, but the defluorinated firefighting foam is also ineligible. And this list is so long.
We had a quick question
Yeah.
about are extended warranties considered maintenance or service package? I don't believe so, but I want you to field that yourself.
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to look at our yellow book and see what guidance is in there. because we can't, because this is, and I should have had this in an earlier slide. This is a reimbursement grant, so the process is that if you're awarded a grant, you purchase the equipment, you pay the vendor for the equipment, and then you submit for reimbursement through us. And I don't know how extended warranties fall into that. If that falls under the same as the service and maintenance packages where you would have to submit quarterly or at the end of the year for that. And we could only reimburse it through the end of the biennium. So we'd have to do figure out some kind of prorated thing. But I will look into that, and we will get an answer for you. What my advice is, apply for it, put it in your application. We're not going to, if there ends up being something in your application that is ineligible, we're not going to mark your entire application as ineligible. During the agreement process, that's when we'll discuss about what you put in that isn't eligible for, based on what our funding guidelines say, and also what we can reimburse through agency policy. Okay. And ineligible projects is so long that we get a second slide. So I talked about service or maintenance packages. That was a really good segue into the slide. And equipment that it's used to respond to events that are part of your normal operating environment. We talked about that as well. SCBA cylinders and harnesses, I'm sorry, this is still not an eligible component for this grant cycle. I know, I actually don't know what the status is of federal grants right now. And I know last biennium, we said that this was SCBA cylinders and harnesses were not eligible because there were federal grants to do this, and replacing SCBAs to get up to NFPA compliance. It eats into a significant chunk of the small budget that we do have. And when these funding guidelines were created, this was and finalized, was before there was a hiatus on some federal grants. And so I don't have the ability to go in and change it for this biennium. Things might look different the next biennium. I don't know, but as of for right now, those are not eligible. GCMS, a gas chromatograph, mass spectrometer, chemical detection equipment is ineligible. And then, as I mentioned before, equipment or training for the biological, radiation, nuclear, or explosive incidents. Also with this, I didn't directly put in, if you are putting in for equipment that is solely to respond to natural gas, you are not going to be as successful or high up in priority. So my suggestion would be, if you are applying for stuff that is for to respond to natural gas, when you're writing your application, really tie in how it connects to other oil and hazmat incidents. There are 3 tasks in which our grant program is built around: new response equipment and resources, the spill response and hazardous materials training, and then maintenance of existing response equipment and resources. And so I'm going to talk about what each of those 3 tasks are. We have our equipment broken down into several categories, and this is when you go into the application, and I will show you when we go into how to navigate Eagle, what this exactly looks like. These categories do not mean that if you want to apply for something that doesn't fit neatly into one of these categories, that it's not eligible. This is kind of the way that this is built is to kind of help me track metrics over time of where funds are being requested and awarded through, so we can see trends. Appendix C in the funding guidelines has a definition of kind of what all of these categories are. I will say something that I didn't throw in under the conditionally eligible and that is new for this grant cycle is vehicles. So vehicles are eligible, but if any modifications needed, if you can't just buy it directly off the lot, you need to make some significant modifications that may put it outside of the biennium. It may not be a I don't want to say not a high priority because they are needed, but it's kind of along the lines of with replacing entire radio systems is we can't we're not going to award projects that might take longer than the biennium right now at this point, just because of the way that our funding is built. So I don't want to dissuade anybody from applying for a vehicle that needs some modifications. It's made to it to be able to meet your needs, but I just want to point that out, and the funding guidelines does talk about that. And that's just kind of the same with vessels as well. We're looking at how we can develop this grant program in the future to be able to pull funds over from one biennium to another, or have agreements overlap bienniums. But we're not there yet. We hope to be there sometime in the future. And I know everybody always is curious, what are other people applying for? What are some examples? We did an airboat a few grant cycles to WDFW. And the bottom picture doesn't show the cash trailer, but this whole grant program originated really back in 2006 when we gave out, I think it was over 90 caches, but I think around 50 trailers around the state that has, they're all kind of built the same with equipment inside of it, containment boom and sorbents and PPE and stuff for decon. We call them the equipment cache trailers. This one was on Bainbridge Island, and the fire department was able to get the trailer out and put boom around this tugboat before it sank, effectively containing, I think it was around 700 gallons of diesel within the containment boom and preventing a mass, kind of big environmental mess. Every grant cycle, we have a couple of applicants that apply for a cache trailer, and at the very, I think it's the very end of the funding guidelines is the original inventory that was in the original trailer. If you're applying for a cache trailer, please feel free to use that. Also, please feel free to make the trailer, customize it to what your needs are for your area. Speaking of trailers, this is one of the hazmat trailers that was built in Pierce County. And over in, I think this is the Spokane Fire, I think. They did some foam trailers that they can tote out to an incident if needed. And I will say, like, the firefighting foam, where that really stems from is, when this, the Oil Transportation Safety Act was passed, crude by rail was the big issue at the time, and not having the right tools, including firefighting foam, to help if there was a train derailment in the community and a fire. And so firefighting foam, we understand that it is used for other things other than just oil and hazmat incident. So when you are writing your grant, and this goes with anything that you're applying for, if it's a vehicle, if it's a boat, any piece of equipment, really make that connection to a hazmat or oil spill response. If you don't have that connection, if you're, saying that, the foam for structural fires, or you need this piece of equipment to get somebody out of a vehicle, and you don't make that connection to hazmat or oil spill, then you won't be successful. And then just some other examples. This is not promoting any brand over another brand, but just to kind of show that we have had people apply for stuff for decon to build decon kits or decon trailers, chemical identification. So like the Gemini is a popular one. Area arrays or four gas meters. So I said that SCBA cylinders and harnesses were not eligible, but what is eligible are the Cascade fill stations, the portable ones that you can bring on site to refill bottles. We usually have one or two applicants a grant cycle that get awarded funds to build that out. Talked about drones. We actually had, I think we had two. This was the 23-25 grant cycle was the first cycle where we had drones eligible. And I think we had two applicants receive funding for that. And then I don't know where my other pictures disappeared to the head on here. PPE and other consumables used for oil and hazmat. And this is non-inclusive. This is not all inclusive. There's other things on here that I did not talk about that are eligible for funding. Training is our second category, and this includes.
Laura, I had one quick question.
Yeah.
I figure I'd at least bring out to the group. There's a question about vehicles for towing response and cash trailers.
Yes.
Just make sure those are eligible as well.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that is absolutely eligible. That is a very clear connection to oil hazmat response. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I guess it would be conditionally eligible if you needed to build out the truck and you couldn't just buy it off the lot. But that's when we go into agreement negotiations. We have that discussion and talk about that. Okay, so for training, we can reimburse the cost of a class, the instructor and training fees, transportation, lodging, sustenance, training materials. This is in-state or out-of-state training. It includes conferences and workshops. We cannot cover, unfortunately, salaries and benefits of somebody to go attend the training or to backfill somebody so people can go and attend the training. We know that is something that having to work in the, especially on the fire side, to backfill employees to cover for people, that is an extra cost. It's just not something that our budget can support at this time. Some examples, HAZWOPER is going to be virtual or in person, conferences, workshops, training to bring a vendor in or reimbursement to bring a vendor in on to train your team on equipment. We have seen in the past people reach out to some of the oil spill response organizations in the area to come in and do training on how to deploy boom in their region or use their cash trailer. And if you invite other entities and response partners to come in and attend your training, our evaluators like to see that. Other kind of examples. So the Science of Oil Spills is a course that NOAA puts on every June. The course is free, but you do have to pay for travel, lodging, and food. So this could cover those costs. The Northwest Oil Spill Control course is a class that takes place for about a week in August. And that is put on, typically the Coast Guard and the oil industry will host it or sponsor it. The class itself is free. So this would again cover the cost of travel and per diem. SCAT classes, that's something that NOAA and sometimes other response organizations in the area will put on those trainings. Hazmat IQ on the fire side. This is not all inclusive. There are lots of other trainings that are eligible for funding.
Laura, there's another question here about
Yeah.
if the vendor provides training with the price of the equipment, does that need to be outlined in the application or budget?
Oh, it does not. If it's included, you can put that in the application on the equipment side, but yeah, that's yeah, it doesn't need to be outlined separately.
Right. Thank you.
And so this last task, maintenance of existing response equipment, this is specific to equipment that you received through a prior equipment grant funding opportunity. So through this grant program in one of the previous grant cycles, including one of the original grant trailers from 2006. And this is maintenance and repairs to keep your equipment in efficient operating condition. We do expect you to be able to handle the maintenance needs in-house and yourself without the support of the grant, but this is an opportunity to kind of help offset those costs as needed. You can use it to repair and replace equipment in the trailers themselves, the wheels, the brakes, lights, trailers and vehicles, boats, to replace parts of equipment from a previous grant. So this is the consumable pieces of it. If you purchase or requested like a Gemini from us and it has broken and you need to replace the Gemini, then that would go under new equipment. But if you need to replace the calibration gas or the sensors or something, then this is an opportunity here for you to do that. Okay, I'm going to pause there before we go into how we select the projects for agreement. Any other questions or anything that's come up, Richard?
I don't see anything else new, but if everyone has any questions, now would be a good time to take a quick break and see if there are. I don't see anything else pending. Oh, I see a hand raised from David Heimer. If you just want to unmute, I think you can unmute, David, if you just want to ask yourself.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, I had a question for you. So, one on only direct costs. I know that Department of Fish and Wildlife has been very what's the right word, picky, very resistant to the idea of not getting indirect. And
right.
Our fiscal officer has said, no, you can't. Another agency cannot deny another agency indirect. So I just put that up there. You don't have to answer me, but if we come to you with a grant, that's got to be figured out ahead of time, so I don't have to try to explain it to them. Yeah, that was one thing. And then the other thing was the drones off the blue list. I mean, I just saw a thing earlier in the week where a bunch of drones on that blue list were taken off. There was not as far as I know, not an explanation given. So again, it's one of those things that if people are buying stuff off the blue list thinking they're good to go, you're going to want to know have some kind of certainty about that. So those are the two things that come to mind.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, regarding the indirect rate, that I think, gosh, I don't know how to answer it. Because that is something that we have come across with projects from DFW in the past, and we have in our funding guidelines that we're not going to do indirect rates. I am meeting with our budget officer on Tuesday. Now I'll bring that up to him and ask him to go see if he can go to one of his budget meetings and talk with people there about like how we might be able to support DFW with that. Yeah, because I would hate for somebody to lose an opportunity to apply for equipment that is needed because of that issue. And the main reason is if we did a 20% indirect rate eligible for everybody, off of $3.1 million, that's a significant, that's like $600,000 of, if I did my math right in my head, that we're awarding in indirect rates, and we're not able to award out for training and equipment. And then regard to your second thing, I was not aware of that with the drone issue. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to. We'll have to. Yeah, I'll have to look into that and see. I don't want that to stop anybody from applying for a drone. When we go into agreement negotiations, if you apply for a drone and you get funding, we'll talk about what isn't eligible. There's in the funding guidelines, it references a couple of U.S. codes that they need to be compliant with. And so when we go into agreement negotiations, we can talk about what drone you're wanting to purchase and if it is or isn't on that list and what that means. Yeah, thank you for bringing those up. Good questions. Okay, moving on. How do we do project selection or our awards? So after you submit your application, it will be sent through screening, where we will check for eligibility. And that's really the main things that we're looking at here for eligibility are that you have a role in an emergency response plan and that you have the appropriate training for the equipment that you are requesting. And I don't know why it says that last sentence, but once it goes through screening, then I will move it into evaluation. And our evaluation process is two-part. We have the GIS module, and then we have the part that our external evaluators, external and internal evaluators will look at. And our goal is to try and have a minimum of 2 evaluators per application. Okay, so this is in the funding guidelines. So you can, I think this is Appendix B, that you can go and look at for more detail than what I will give here, but it really outlines each step of the evaluation process. And I am going to start with this GIS module that we have created. So when I talked earlier about we kind of created this module to take place of several questions that we were asking the applicant to identify themselves. This really takes all that work out. It makes it less subjective. Yeah, I'm just going to go and just start. So there's 4 pieces, 4 parts to it that we look at through a GIS lens. Hazmat team service areas, economically distressed communities, the environmental health disparities, and then oil spill and hazmat commodities. And so when you put in your application, you will be required to put in a project area. And I'll show this when we go into navigating Eagle. This is where it's really important for you to put in the boundaries of your organization. If city and county, there's things that are pre-identified in here. Fire districts is not something that is in here. So if you need help pulling in the boundaries of your organization, reach out. We will help you do it. If it is coming down to crunch time, just draw a square on here and we will correct it after your application is submitted. When we go through the screening process, that's where we'll go through and make sure that all of these project areas are accurate. And the reason why we want them to be accurate is because this is what we use to calculate our scores through the GIS module. So for hazmat team service areas, we are looking at where the location of our ecology spill response teams are at. So the different regional offices and field offices. We're looking at where the ecology contractors are located, so who we can contract out to. And then the project area is weighted based on response times from all of those different entities. And in the previous version, we asked, and this is like this is 21-23 grant cycle and before, we asked you, the applicant, to tell us, hey, what resources are available to help you? And this was not only from on the state level, but also the federal level and industry. And we decided when we did this that we would just count the hazmat resources that we, Ecology, have the ability to control. We can't tell the federal government when to respond. We can't tell industry when to respond if it's not their incident. And we look at economically distressed communities. So we, the project areas, they're mapped over the census data that is released through the American Community Survey, and the percent area of your project area that has a median household income of less than 80% of the state median household income are awarded weighted points in this category. So in the past, we had the applicant had to go in and find out what the median household income was for your area and put that in there. And now we are able to do that ourselves. The environmental health disparities map. So this is done through the Department of Health. And the project area is averaged based on the area within each environmental health disparities rank region. And what this looks like, it's kind of like this. So the project map I showed you earlier, this is the circle is identifying where that boundary is. And what we're able to do is take a weighted average of the area and the score and come up with one weighted average instead of in the past, we instructed the evaluators to identify where the project area is and then pick the color that is the highest, and that's the score that you'll get. So this is a lot less subjective. We can calculate them easier. And I also wanted to mention here that if the project falls under or crosses over tribal land, one of the ways that we are working on incorporating environmental justice into this grant program is tribal reservation lands typically don't have as up-to-date data as other parts of the state. And so to accommodate for that and account for it, we are projects that overlap on tribal lands to get an automatic score here of 10. And we have identified those as, yeah. Sorry, my notes are not making sense for this at all, but I have written down here. But I guess the takeaway from this is if your project falls over tribal reservation land, then the score will be 10. All right, and the last part of that, oil and hazmat commodities. So in the past, we asked you to, hey, what are all the different commodities and risks in your area, and tell us about them. And you might identify stuff that wasn't really what we were asking for, or you might not put in stuff that was what we felt was relevant. And so we created this list of oil and hazmat commodities that travel through Washington State, and these are of significance and importance to the skills program at Ecology, and all of this data is publicly available. And so we pull that in and we kind of do this weighted average on all of these entities to come out with a final score. So some of it is presence absence, some of it is miles of highway or rail that goes through your area. This is just an example of some of the commodities. This is on our spills story map. Okay, and then this is what our evaluators are looking at. They're looking at your request and how it fits in with other resources in the area. Are you coordinating with other response partners? Your request is appropriate for your role. So if you're saying, hey, we're going to go in and plug and patch something, you have that role identified in that emergency response plan. And you're not putting yourself in a situation that is beyond what your role and authority and training gives you. They're looking at your budget and the training that you have. Appendix B in the funding guidelines has a table that identifies each of these components. And this is what we give our evaluators. It tells you where to go and find the answer and how to score it. So you should be able to look at that and build your answers based on that. So maximum points of 75 can be awarded between the two different types of evaluation. And applications must have a final combined score 35 or higher to be considered for funding. And we take all of those applications, and this is how we are going to do the award selection process this grant cycle. It's a two-step process. And in the first step, we are going to pull the grant that is a first responder or emergency management category. So that includes fire departments, fire districts, sheriff's office, emergency management, police department type organizations. And we will take the highest scoring application from each of the 4 ecology regions. So our Northwest, our Southwest, our Central, and our Eastern offices. And we'll take the highest one, and then those will be ranked based on score. So if the or entity from Northwest scored higher than Central, Southwest, Eastern, then that's how it will be ranked. And then step 2, we will take the highest scoring application from each of the 4 regions, and this is what for representing the other applicant types. So federally recognized tribal governments, ports, cities, etc., and we'll do the same thing. And so we have our list of 8 awards, and we're going to repeat this process until we run out of funding. So in the past, we've generally done the awards from our evaluation is done. We rank them highest evaluation to lowest evaluation, and then just done a blanket award from there. This time, because we really want to try and distribute funding around the state as equitably as possible. This is how we have decided to do it this time. Yeah. So then once I have my final list, I will present it to the Spills Program leadership team. They'll review for final approval, and then we will begin negotiating with our recipient. Before we go into navigating Eagle, are there any questions? Okay.
Sorry, I had one just pop up. Let's see, I'm just reading along. If we are purchasing equipment and the price includes software or firmware cost, is that eligible? And if it is eligible, does it need to be outlined separately in the budget or as part of the equipment cost?
Yeah, good question. It is eligible. I will show kind of what the budget form looks like, and that might help answer the last part of that question.
All right, and I had a hand raised as well from Chris. If you just want to unmute and ask yourself, you are welcome to.
Yeah, I was just curious because it looks like fire department emergency response is first and port secondary. I'm a hazmat team at a port when filling at the Port of Seattle. So when filling out for an application, should we identify ourselves as the port or as the fire department from the port?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because I know that's a really good point. Because there are, I know we have some cities, like City of Spokane, will apply, and it's their fire department. If you are a fire department, but you are housed like as a county or as a city or a port, then you'll apply as fire. And when I pull the evaluation scores and do that priority list, I will put you under the first responder category.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Gosh, I brought something else up too that I meant to talk about. It will come back to me. Okay, so I'm gonna pop out of the presentation, and usually, oh, this is our test earlier. Usually what I do at this point is I will navigate you through Eagle and how to apply for your grant. Unfortunately, because we are working on transitioning to this new platform, they are keeping our test environment very, very, very clean, and I don't have access to the test environment for our grant. So I'm not going to be able to walk you through like I would like to. The application instructions that I emailed out has a very thorough and detailed instructions on how to navigate through Eagle. And I have screenshots in here of, this is from the 23-25 application, but all the questions are exactly the same. So I highly encourage you to look at it. It tells you what the different symbols mean, global errors, yeah, so everybody, to apply for a grant, you need to navigate to Eagle through Secure Access Washington. If you do not already have an Eagle account or access to Eagle, create an account through Secure Access Washington. There's instructions in here on how to do that. And there's also instructions in the funding guidelines on how to create an account. If you are not seeing our grant as an opportunity to apply for, it's either because you are not an eligible entity or you do not have the role as authorized official. So you must be an authorized official in order to do that and to apply for a funding opportunity. And when you go to view available opportunities, our grant will come up and it will have the application availability dates, when the application is due, and you hit apply now. If right now we have it built into, that is really annoying. We have it built so that only one application can be initiated per organization. So if you need to have two separate applications, like I know sometimes that's the case with DFW. You guys have, well, sometimes the oil spill team, and then your team will, there was like one grant cycle where you guys both had applications. Let me know, and we will get it so that you can initiate two applications. The reason for restricting that is our first grant cycle, Eagle is so confusing. We had people initiating application and then they didn't know how to navigate back to it. So then they would start a new one. And sometimes people would have 3 or 4 applications open, and it just keeps things cleaner and for us to manage and for you to manage, so you can easily get back to your application. And once you create your application, this document information number, that is your grant application number. So I would encourage you to write it down somewhere, just to make it easier to navigate back into your application. If you email us with any questions about your application and you throw that into the subject line, it makes it easier for us to find your application as well. And your role will be here. It should be listed as authorized official. Other roles can work in your application, but you have to be an authorized official to initiate and submit an application. And then your current status will be listed here, application in process. I really, really encourage you, if you think you have submitted your application, make sure that the status changes and doesn't still say application in process. It is not intuitive, and I apologize for that. It's not an intuitive system to get your application submitted because it is a status role change. But if you follow the instructions in this guideline, then you should be successful in getting your application submitted. The application menu, this tells you where you are. If you ever get lost in your application, if you click on the document information, it will take you back to this application menu, and you can start over in your navigation. But view forms is where all of the forms are going to be that you need to fill out. There are 8 of them, and they're not, you don't need to complete all 8 forms if you're not applying for equipment and training and maintenance. So this is what it will look like when you click view forms. And again, this document information, this will take you back to the application menu. Your role will be here, the status, the application instructions and funding guidelines. You can also find them here. And then all the forms that you need to go into and fill out are listed down here. Remember to hit save often. And I actually encourage you to write out your answers in Word and then copy and paste them into Eagle. I myself have been in Eagle and been inputting stuff, and something happened and I lost everything I was working on. And so I encourage you to work on your answers outside of Eagle so that way you don't lose them. Save and save often. So the first form is our general information form. This is everything on here is going to end up on your agreement. So you will have the opportunity to make changes to this if you're successful in an award. This is where you put your project title, a short description, and then a bit of a longer description of the project, and then the total project cost. And these numbers are going to be the same. If they are different, it is going to give you a warning and an error, and it won't let you submit your application. The effective dates, this is hidden. This will be it'll be from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th of 2025. So that is pre-filled out for you. The project category, the program, and the overall goal are all pre-populated for you. The next form is project characterization. There will be only one thing to choose from in each dropdown. And what this does is on the public-facing Ecology grants and loans map, where you can go in and look at different projects and that Ecology has awarded funds for, you can narrow it down to this grant program through these themes. The third form is mapping information. So this is where you build your map, and I am going to show through Spokane's grant what that looks like. So this is what I see. So you can see my role is different. If we go into view forms and I go down to mapping information, you're going to hit add and modify locations. And it's going to think. I'm not even getting thinking. I don't just, well, that's unfortunate if it doesn't want to work for me right now. Maybe it wants me to check it in. Oh, okay, I wanted me to check it in. Okay. So in here, it's defaulted to city and county. If you click the project area options, then a few more options open up pre-populated boundaries that we have. If you have applied for a previous grant through us, or even through another program, and you're going to use the same project boundary, you can open up, click on that grant project boundary, hit go, and that document number that I showed you, put in the previous grants project number, and it will import that project boundary so you don't have to go in and recreate it yourself. If you are if you put in the entire state of Washington as your project area, then I will, before it goes to evaluation, I will give you a call, because that the way that our GIS module is built, it's not built for a state project, and we will narrow down where exactly your project is. So for example, the oil spill team with Fish and Wildlife applied for a grant, and they are a state agency, but this was this current biennium, but their project was specific to the Puget Sound and up and around the San Juan Islands. So we drew their project boundary for that area. Even though they're a state agency, the project was defined to that area. Once you have your project boundary in, you're going to hit next, and this is going to calculate some statistics like legislative district and WIRAs, ecology region, and then you're going to hit save. And this is what you see, and intuitively you might think you're good to go and move on to the next form, but you will get an error when you try to submit because it is still checked out. And so what you have to do here is hit save, and that will check it in. And if you are in there and you need to go back in there and it won't let you, like it wasn't letting me earlier, I had to check it back in before I could go back to it again. So hitting save will check the map in. That's probably one of the biggest errors that we see people get, even internally when we're doing all of our reports and forms and stuff. We have to go into this project area so often for different parts of the grant process that it's even a struggle for us. Okay, so that we have that mapping information done, this talks through what I just talked about. We're looking at recipient contacts. So there's 3 contacts that you will need in there to move into agreement. It's your project manager, your authorized signatory, and your billing contact. It's okay when you're putting in your application that you put the same person for all 3, but when we move to the agreement, we will need the name of, and it might be you. It might be the same person for all 3 roles. We don't typically like to see that because If you, for whatever reason, leave your organization, now it leaves nobody that has access to that agreement. And we need to work on getting other people assigned. If there's even anybody else within your organization who even has an Eagle account. Your authorized signatory, that is that's not an actual role in Eagle. It can they do need an Eagle account so that we can pull them in here. And this is the person that has the legal authority to enter into an agreement with Ecology. If they do not want to be spammed with a bunch of emails from Eagle. You can, when they get assigned into Eagle, you can assign them the role as role of reader. So they don't need a role to be able to access anything in here. This is just to get them printed onto the agreement. So assigning them the role of reader will prevent them from getting all of the spam that Eagle can send out. And if there are additional people that need to sign your agreement, you can put their name here and their title. We do agreement signing now through DocuSign. And so if you're successful and we're moving you into an agreement, we will contact you with for everybody's email address and to make sure that they get routed or part of the routing through DocuSign. And okay, so this is the first, I did not put a screenshot of all the questions in here. So there's
before
some
we
questions
move on,
on,
we had a quick question. It was about the process of going from SAW into Eagle. Pretty much making sure that if they have an active SAW account, that they're going to be able to access Eagle. Or is there any other sort of authorization that they need in there or organization designation to be able to find the applications?
Yeah, that I can show you that process because I'm going to go into our test environment. So you log into SAW. You will request add a new service, and you'll request access to Eagle. And you're gonna hit access now, and then if you already have an Eagle account, this isn't relevant. But if you're creating a new one, it's going to ask you a few questions about your organization type and your role, and it will ping somebody who is already listed as an authorized official to approve you. If you do not get that approval or you feel that it is taking a long time, feel free to reach out and we can ask our Eagle team that sits in our fiscal office to go in and approve you. If you accidentally assign yourself the wrong role or get signed up for the wrong role, we can help change that. And so, gosh, did I miss part of the question, Richard?
No, I think that caught most of it. Ramon, did that answer your question there? Sorry, it took a moment to get to you. Not seeing a response, but I think that's pretty cut and dried. Yeah, we're getting a yes. Thank you.
Okay, good. I kind of lost myself in there just a little bit. Okay. So on the first form where you're going to be answering questions, there's some things that you will need to provide to upload supporting documentation. And so this page just kind of talks you through what you need to provide in there. And if you're missing any of this, the screening process will catch it. And if the application deadline has not passed, then we can send the application back to you for you to get those things uploaded. So another reason to try and get your application in. I can't guarantee if you do it within the last week of when the grant is open, can't guarantee that we'll be able to do that to screen your application for anything missing. But the earlier you get it in the I will take a look and for the screening. So the next three forms are for equipment, training, and the maintenance. And when you go into the form, all you're going to see is question 1. Are you requesting new equipment or resources? If you hit no, nothing is going to open up for you. If you hit yes, then it's going to open up all the other questions in here. And this is kind of what our budget form looks like. It has the categories. It has a place for you to put in a description and the amount requested. So this description, you can be as prescriptive or as vague as you want. If you put in, I like to use, we're requesting 20 pairs of boots. And when it comes time to negotiate the award with you, and you're like, we put in for 20 pairs of boots, but we really only need 10, or we think 30 would be better. We're not going to hold you to the specific items that you have in here. The description of what you're putting in for is for that category itself. So as long as you put something in that category and it's relevant to that category, and you're like, hey, we don't want this vendor, we would like this vendor, or this type of air monitoring equipment is going to meet our needs better, then that is fine. But if you don't put something in under air monitoring, and we go to negotiate your award, and you're like, we really don't need this containment equipment, the air monitoring would better fit our needs, I can't authorize that as being an eligible component because you didn't have it in your budget sheet. And then when you put in the amount requested, it will, after you hit save, it'll tally everything up here at the bottom for you. And then the next question is your request for funding greater than $100,000? And this is to help us identify what projects can and can't be completed if we need to, if we're going to put a restriction on the award amount. And it was going to, it didn't pop it up. So it's just going to ask you to prioritize what your what your ask is, if it's over $100,000. And if it can't be completed for less than $100,000, put that in there. We had 2 or 3 applications that had equipment costs for a single piece of equipment as over $100,000 that we did authorize that award to be. We didn't restrict them to the $100,000 like we did with everybody else this grant cycle. And then it's going to ask you what gaps exist and how does your equipment address those gaps. How do you plan to house and maintain? The process used to estimate costs in the budget. So do your research, whether it's an easy online research or you need to call a vendor and get, without getting an actual request for bid, but just getting a price estimate. Do your research, upload your supporting documentation here. One of the evaluation pieces is, was your budget well thought out? Did you do the research? We know that prices today are not going to be the same as prices come August, September. They may go up or they may go down in price. That's totally fine. We just want to see that you did your research to estimate your costs. And then are you requesting a drone? There will be a window that pops open if you said yes to answer some other questions. And then this is what the budget sheet will look like for training. Again, this thing is kind of, bubble is kind of hiding it. You have to hit, if you want training, you have to hit yes to open up these questions. And it's going to ask you to what the training is, description of the training, about how many attendees, and the total. And it's asking again, what gaps exist for training. Does this request fill those gaps? The process used to estimate the budget, and the need for training and how it will enable you to better respond to hazmat or oil spills. I will say in here, if you are applying from a public utility or a stormwater division of a city or county, and you have an obligation for like MS4 permits and stuff like that, don't put that in your answers. This grant is not meant to help you comply with those requirements. This is meant to help you with things that might happen in your area that go above and beyond your day-to-day MS4 permit requirements. So really make that connection to those extenuating incidents that might impact your area, whether it's semi-truck wrecks and like saddle tank ruptures. Like use an example that has happened where you have not had the resources to be able to address those incidents, whether, to keep a couple 100 gallons of diesel from getting into a storm drain or in an outfall kind of thing. So don't write this for your everyday MS4 permit requirements. Write it for those bigger emergency extenuating circumstances. And then if you are putting in for something for a previous grant, it's going to ask a description of what that is. And then your ecology agreement number, so that's that document ID that I showed you earlier. I will show you, if you don't know what that is, I will show you how to find it, and amount requested. And then again, this is going to ask for how you came up with the estimate for your budget. And also, like, if you've used this equipment on an incident, we want to know about it so we can share that story. And then once all those forms are complete, you are ready to submit and change your status. So this next part shows you how to return to your application if you navigate away from it. So on the homepage, as you'll see here, you'll see my inbox, and there will be nothing that will pop up. They'll say my tasks, and you should still see, when you open up my tasks, you should see that your application is in process, and you can navigate back to it that way. You can also go to my applications and put in your application name and hit search. If you don't remember your application name, SPPREG-2527, if you just do that, that will also pop up your application in process. And then you click on the name and that will take you to your application. Okay, to submit your application, after you've cleared all the global errors, and you all of your forms have this little icon on it, then you can move to changing the status. And this just shows you what to do if you have a global error. And to change the status, you have to go back to the application menu, hit view status options under change the status. It is not an easy like submit, it's a status change. And this, I don't know what this will look like in the new IGX platform. Hopefully this will be a lot more intuitive. And then when you hit change the status, then you change the status to application submitted. If you accidentally hit application canceled, don't panic, contact me. I will have our IT team also write a heat ticket to get the status changed back. It will let you know if there are any global errors before that need to be cleared. And this is the most common one, is that map has not been checked in. And then it's going to ask you to agree to this statement. Oh, this font really got messed up. And then once you hit I agree, then the current status will change to application submitted. Make sure you see that. And that's how you know your application has been submitted. And yeah, now you just have to wait for us to put it through screening and evaluation and get funding given to us from the legislature. So with that, I am now going to open it up for questions. Cool. I think I've given it that awkward.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions.
15 seconds.
So precise, Laura.
I'm sure there's lots of things I left out and didn't go over. Please look at the application instructions, the funding guidelines. There's a lot of information in there. There's a couple of things that I am going to follow up on and get back to people on. Yeah, thank you so much for attending. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. Yeah, I'm going to, oh, there we go. Michelle, I see your hand.
Hi, Laura. I just put this in the chat, and I don't know if it's appropriate for here or not, but I had emailed you on 3/6 with a time-sensitive question for our current award, and I haven't heard back, and I know this isn't really the right forum, but since I have you here, I wanted to at least bring it to your attention.
Yeah. Do you want to give me a call when this is over, and I will, that'll give me time. I'll pull up your email.
Sure. I will do that. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. With that, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We will get a copy of the slide deck and a copy of the recording, or a link to the recording. It may not be today, it might be tomorrow. Once you figure out where, it takes a little bit of time for that recording to come through, and then we'll have to download it and move it somewhere. Yeah. Oh, Raman, if you're still on, I want to make one clarification on your question. If you have an active SAW account and is with your, that SAW account was with your current organization, then that's all you need. If you have changed organizations and you don't have a new SAW account with your new organization, you will need to create a new SAW account. You can only have, you have to have a separate SAW account for each organization. You can't share SAW accounts across organizations.
Thank you for the presentation, Laura. If there are questions or roadblocks throughout this process, are you the sole person who's collecting all that, or are there other email addresses you would like us to bring into the loop?
Yeah, if you actually email both myself and Richard, I don't think Richard's information is in any of the documentation, but Richard, perfect, thank you so much. Richard's really good at being able to answer like general how to navigate Eagle questions and some of the more straightforward questions about the application process itself. I can happy to answer the more nuanced questions about, is this eligible? Is this not eligible? Like, what do you mean by this? How do you interpret this question? Kind of a thing. Yeah, so email both of us and we'll figure out the right person to get back to you.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for attending, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
You too. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna stop recording.